But that sort of contemporary animism comes over more as a philosophy than a faith. It's an intellectual stance in faith, and an argument to hold and to exercise. And as such, it works really well. It's very good as a campaigning tool because people understand and relate to conversations about rights. It's also, if you like, an ecological animism that sort of manifests as things like the Gaia hypothesis and things like that, which essentially says the Earth is a living organism and it will always try and find its own ways of balancing itself and maintaining itself. I mean, for me, training as an ecologist was really interesting because by the time I was an undergraduate, I had been really educated and the intensity, the structure of biology for me mirror my experience as a pagan, and that sense of always looking at relationships, looking at interconnectedness, looking at how one thing depends on another. And in ecological terms, you look at that in terms of passage of energy through ecosystems. And for me, it was just, that's just words and numbers to try and describe my experience. But we'll come back to experience in a little bit. Going back to that, those first ideas, in animism, all things share awareness, share consciousness. It's often said that animism is sort of the earliest form or the earliest expression of spirituality, and people are very good at sort of reading it into paintings and caves, up and ring markings and rocks and all sorts of things. We don't know. Nobody can know that. You know, somebody painted stunning images on a drawing 10,000 years ago. We don't know why they did this. It would be really nice if we did. And as an animist, I can sit and relate to those and I can find my interpretation of them. And I can take what I need from them. I have no idea what the thinking was in someone who did the piece. But again, the idea is very appealing. And there's a simplicity to that basic idea of just the world is alive that's really appealing. But as soon as you try and sort of walk into that and start working with it, you almost need to make more complicated stories. Because if you're like, oh, everything's alive, it's just so big. It's like, how else to do with that? And you have to start talking to this or that or these things, looking at the world as you meet it, as you experience it. And then it's how you experience it. It's what then starts to build up or maybe build up the faiths and the practices that we know today. But at the heart of it, all is all with respect